Hello everyone, good morning. Requesting those of you who are still outside to get into the room and take your seats, please. Please call a friend who's still outside. If you don't come in quickly, I'm going to mention you by name. I'm trying to see who. Let's get into the room, please. Hello everyone, good morning. Please let's get into the room and get this underway. We have a lot on our program and would like to cover it within the time that has been allocated. Please help me get those people who are still outside into the room. I'm going to get these people myself. Please get in. Those who are still outside, please get in. Get everyone in. All those who are outside, please get into the room. We want to start. Please get in. Please get in. We want to start now. I'm about to start calling you by name. If I know your name. Let's take our seats, please. Habari za asubuhi. The Ugandans, you have no chance with Swahili. Habari za asubuhi. Good heavens. Habari za asubuhi. Let's try that one. Wonderful. Habari za asubuhi. Okay. My name is Andrew Karamaji. I have the privilege and an enviable task of being one of the co-MCs alongside my colleague, Njeri Mwangi. Please. Let's appreciate her, please. Yes. And our task today is to ensure that we exhaust the program as contained in this sheet of paper that you have with you. And before we get the actual substantive business underway, I'd like to welcome Field Marshal, who will whose group will lead us with a musical, and then we'll get discussions ongoing. Field Marshal, you're welcome.
Greetings in the name of the Lord Most High, ever living, ever faithful, ever useful. Jah Rastafari. From where I stand, I can clearly see your already tormented faces. How most of you hate me, I even wonder how many of you think of killing me, of assassinating me. But again, I look at you all and I see fear, passive fear, fear for death. No martyrs are amongst ourselves. So I am safe under the confines of the law to overwork you, overtax you, police force you, brutalize you. My people, Kenyan people, Tanzanian people, Burundi people, Rwanda people, Congo people, Uganda people. No martyrs are amongst ourselves. If when I speak, do you feel weak? When you hear my thoughts, do you feel caught in a web of hopelessness? Would you love that my poems were lighter, spoke more of a certain adventure that gave pleasure? Or would you call me a brute if I wore a suit and say that I was cute? Do you see what I mean? Or do my poems sometimes make you fart about the future of things to come? The solutions that we seek will never come in a strip of a pen or in 10 lines of mimes. The problems are still the same. So do not blame me if when I speak, you do feel weak. I did not create it. I came into this world with neither guns or knives. I made no laws with all its flaws about the rich and the poor. I speak, I sing, I recite of what I see, of men old and women in slavery, of the rich, the poor, and the greedy. So do not blame me if when I speak, you do feel weak. I did not create it. I did not create it. Now, tell me this. Would you accuse me of causing a riot in Kampala while I was quiet? Would you? Muy vale. Okay, East Africa is here. You know, tutatumia English na Kiswahili. Hapo sawa? I'm sorry because I know Kiswahili back home in Uganda is the language of oppression, but here is the language of liberation. Kwa hivyo tuko sawa, si ndio? All right. We do solidarity music, and I'll ask you to join me, to join the band, the Field Marshal's band, because our songs are very easy to catch, very simple, and very liberating. And I know that one day we will march with you all the way to Kampala to take over what belongs to the people using this music. Iya Yahweh. Oh, iya Yahweh. Oh, iya Yahweh. Oh, iya Yahweh. Imba iya Yahweh. Oh, iya Yahweh. Yalele iya Yahweh. Oh, iya Yahweh. Listen. Oh, dhuluma we webaki nyuma sitwaenda na haki. Imba dhuluma kwenda webaki nyuma sitwaenda na haki. Hata bunduki zao, webaki nyuma sitwaenda na haki. Oh, bunduki kwenda, webaki nyuma sitwaenda na haki. Yelele hiya yawe, hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya. Oh, hiya yawe, hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya. Imba hiya yawe, hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya. Oh, hiya yawe, hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya. Kata risasi we, webaki nyuma sitwaenda na haki. Oh, risasi kwenda, webaki nyuma sitwaenda na haki. Oh, risasi we, webaki nyuma sitwaenda na haki. Oh, risasi we, join me, sing it. Yelele hiya yawe, hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya. Oh, hiya yawe, hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya. Yelele hiya yawe, hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya. Oh, hiya yawe, hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya. Kata oppression, webaki nyuma sitwaenda na haki. Oh, oppression kwenda, webaki nyuma sitwaenda na haki. Hata na fujo we, webaki nyuma sitwaenda na haki. Oh, na fujo zahu, webaki nyuma sitwaenda na haki. Yelele hiya yawe, hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya. Oh, hiya yawe, imba yelele hiya yawe, hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya. Oh, hiya yawe, hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya. Hata natia gesi, webaki nyuma sitwaenda na haki. Natia gesi, webaki nyuma sitwaenda na haki. Hata kufungwa jela, webaki nyuma sitwaenda na haki. Oh, Luzira prison, webaki nyuma sitwaenda na haki. Yelele hiya yawe, hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya. Oh, hiya yawe, hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya. Imba hiya yawe, hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya. Oh, hiya yawe, hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya. Sote simama, simama 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 imara. Oh, simama imara, simama 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 imara. Oh, simama we, simama 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 imara. Oh, simama Uganda, simama 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 imara. Yelele hiya yawe, hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya. Imba hiya yawe, hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya. Oh, hiya yawe, hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya. Oh, hiya yawe, hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya. Now dictator we, webaki nyuma sitwaenda na haki. Ma dictator kwenda, webaki nyuma sitwaenda na haki. Oh, dictator kwenda, webaki nyuma sitwaenda na haki. Ma dictator kwenda, webaki nyuma sitwaenda na haki. Oh, hiya yawe, hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya. Oh, hiya yawe, hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya. Ah, hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya hiya. Oh, hiya yawe, hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya. Sote Sote pamoja wea,
pamoja, pamoja, pamoja twashinda.
Oh, pamoja shinda.
Pamoja, pamoja, pamoja twashinda.
Sote pamoja wea,
Pamoja, pamoja, pamoja twashinda.
Oh, pamoja ndugu.
Pamoja,
Imba.
pamoja, pamoja twashinda.
Yelele hiya ya wea, yelele hiya ya wea, yelele hiya ya wea, hiya ya wea. Listen to this one. Museveni wea, webaki nyuma sitwaenda na haki. Museveni kwenda,
Webaki nyuma sitwaenda na haki.
Museveni kwenda.
Webaki nyuma
Umekaa sana.
sitwaenda na haki.
Museveni kwenda.
Webaki nyuma sitwaenda na haki.
Yelele hiya ya wea, oh hiya ya wea, oh hiya ya wea, hiya ya hiya, oh hiya ya wea. Hata natocha, webaki nyuma sitwaenda na haki. Oh mateso kwenda, abductions way. Oh natocha kwenda, hata na killings way. Mauaji, eyo simama we, simama, simama, simama imara. Oh simama Bobby, sote simama we, simama, simama, simama. Oh simama we, yelele hiya ya we, hiya ya hiya ya hiya ya hiya. Oh hiya ya we, repeta, yelele hiya ya we, hiya ya we. Before you got here, we said Museveni wea, Museveni kweba. Oh na Bosco we, webaki nyuma sitwaenda. We Muse we, webaki nyuma sitwaenda na haki. Yelele hiya ya we, hiya ya hiya, hiya ya we. Holeyo. Asante sana. Yani kumbe, thank you. You are so ready for this. Tusonge kwa siasa mzuri au. Tutasonga kwa siasa nzuri, tukomboe Afrika na wananchi wote.
Tutasonga kwa siasa nzuri, tukomboe Afrika na wananchi wote.
Haya, tutasonga kwa siasa nzuri, tukomboe Afrika na wananchi wote. Imba.
Tutasonga kwa siasa nzuri, tukomboe Afrika na wananchi wote.
Haya, Nairobi tuchukue kwa siasa nzuri, kwa siasa nzuri. Hey! Tutasonga kwa siasa nzuri, tukomboe Afrika na wananchi wote. Pale Tanzania tuingie kwa siasa nzuri, kwa siasa nzuri.
Hey!
Tutasonga kwa siasa nzuri, tukomboe Afrika na wananchi
wote.
Bujumbura tuchukue kwa siasa nzuri, kwa siasa nzuri.
Hey!
Tutasonga kwa siasa nzuri, tukomboe Afrika na wananchi
wote.
hata na Kongo tuchukue kwa siasa nzuri, kwa siasa nzuri.
Hey!
Tutasonga kwa siasa nzuri, tukomboe Afrika na wananchi wote. Hata Kigali tuingie kwa siasa nzuri, kwa siasa nzuri.
Hey!
Tutasonga kwa siasa nzuri, tukomboe Afrika na wananchi wote. Hata Uganda tuingie kwa siasa nzuri, kwa siasa nzuri.
Hey!
Tutasonga kwa siasa nzuri, tukomboe Afrika na wananchi
wote.
pale Tororo tuingie kwa siasa nzuri, kwa siasa nzuri.
Hey!
Tutasonga kwa siasa nzuri, tukomboe Afrika na wananchi
wote.
hata na Jinja tuingie kwa siasa nzuri, kwa siasa nzuri.
Hey!
Tutasonga kwa siasa nzuri, tukomboe Afrika na wananchi
wote.
hata Gatuna tutafika kwa siasa nzuri, kwa siasa nzuri.
Hey!
Tutasonga kwa siasa nzuri, tukomboe Afrika na wananchi hata Kasese tutafika kwa siasa nzuri, kwa siasa nzuri.
Hey!
Tutasonga kwa siasa nzuri, tukomboe
Afrika na wananchi wote.
kwa ndege ya tuchukue kwa siasa nzuri, kwa siasa nzuri.
Hey!
Tutasonga kwa siasa nzuri, tukomboe Afrika na wananchi
wote.
Ugolobi tuchukue kwa siasa nzuri, kwa siasa nzuri.
Hey!
Tutasonga kwa siasa nzuri, tukomboe Afrika na wananchi hata Kampala tuingie kwa siasa nzuri, kwa siasa nzuri.
Hey!
Viva Afrika, viva!
Viva!
Viva Nairobi, viva!
Viva!
Viva Dar es Salaam, viva!
Viva!
Viva Bujumbura, viva!
Viva!
Viva Kigali, viva!
Viva!
Viva Kampala, viva!
Viva!
Viva Uganda, viva!
Viva!
Are you ready for this? Thank you so much. We'll do another number. And this one in Asifu, our heroes and sheroes, those who are there before us, so that we keep remembering not to forget that we stand, even as we do this struggle, on the shoulders of giants, right? So tunawasifu mashujaa wetu. Yeah, this little song is called Nataka. Yani, I want, I need, we must. And you can join us as well. Very easy to catch. Thank you, Fidel. Nataka moyo wangu uende kulinda nafsi zetu, umoja uangaze Afrika, tulenge lengo la ukombozi, tulenge lengo la ukombozi. Dedan Kimathi litoa roho yake iende kulinda nafsi zetu, uzalendo uangaze Afrika, tulenge lengo la ukombozi, tulenge lengo la ukombozi. Mekatililia litoa roho yake iende kulinda nafsi zetu, umoja uangaze Afrika, tulenge lengo la ukombozi, tulenge lengo la ukombozi. Thomas Sankara litoa roho yake iende kulinda nafsi zetu, umoja uangaze Afrika, tulenge lengo la ukombozi, tulenge lengo la ukombozi. Winnie Mandela litoa roho yake iende
kulinda nafsi zetu,
umoja uangaze Afrika, tulenge lengo la ukombozi, tulenge lengo la ukombozi. Nasi sote tutoe roho zetu, ziende kulinda nafsi zetu, umoja uangaze Afrika, tulenge lengo la ukombozi, tulenge lengo la ukombozi. Na Bobi Wine ametoa roho yake iende kulinda nafsi zetu, umoja uangaze Afrika, tulenge lengo la ukombozi, tulenge lengo la ukombozi, tulenge lengo la ukombozi, tulenge lengo la ukombozi. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Let's appreciate them again, please. You can do better than that. I'll not call the next act. Excellent job. Thank you, Field Marshal, and your fantastic team. We look forward to hearing and dancing with you more in the course of the day. Yes. I want to have a volunteer because the next item on the program requires someone who can actually sing the national anthem of Uganda. And if I dare do that, you will chase me out of here with shoes, sticks, and stones. So, want someone to lead us with the national anthem of Uganda. If you do not volunteer yourself, I'm going to pick on someone. Okay, both of you, please come. agree between yourselves whether it's F minor, C major. I do not know those things.
Okay, let's stand. Oh, Uganda, may God uphold thee. We lay our future in thy hand. United, free, for liberty, together we'll always stand.
It's over, we shall wear the victor's crown.
We shall wear the victor's crown. We shall wear the victor's crown.
When the struggle is over,
Shall wear the victor's crown
in the new Uganda. Our power.
Thank you very much to the two volunteers. Let's appreciate them. It's a good thing to appreciate people. And about now, I'd like to have opening remarks from the Executive Director, Kenya Human Rights Commission, Davis Malombe. You're welcome. And if I may risk my job or my assignment, you have 10 minutes. I'm telling my boss that he has 10 minutes to speak.
That's too long because of time. I'll be very, very brief. Comrade power. Oh, this one. Okay. Comrades power. I'm so glad to welcome you to this conference, which is about Uganda Human Rights Accountability Conference, which we have been planning together with Power, comrades from Uganda, the civil society, and the political group led by Dr. Kizza Besigye, now Comrade Bob Wine. I just to say also, we have come a long way with the friends from Uganda. I remember starting from the time Bob Wine was arrested, we, together with Boniface Mwangi and others in the country, we did a massive demonstration in solidarity and also demanding for his unconditional release. And from there, he came to Kenya, where we had very powerful engagement with him. And part of that event happened here. And it's also part of the reasons we chose Ufungamano House for this hosting. And also, Ufungamano House is also known for convening struggles around political and also constitutional reforms in the country. Our partnership continued again last year. Sarah Beretta, you remember, when Uganda was going through elections, it was difficult for Uganda to monitor and respond. And the KHRC and other civil society groups were mandated to run the Uganda Elections Watch, which we did very well. And the most interesting development is we ended up responding to political injustices as opposed to electoral problems. And I think that's where the context of this event is coming in, because today is November 17th, which coincides with 2 years when this atrocities happened, where more than 100 young people were killed. And there were so many other atrocities. And we'll be getting those updates from colleagues from Uganda. Also, not forgetting, when Bob Wine came here, comrade, you ignited a lot of political inspiration, and we even ended up creating other movements. One of them actually was the Beret movement, and at that time we were also working on the Kenya Tuitakayo movement, where also the symbol of that struggle was also a red beret. So you can see the connections between Kenya and Uganda when it comes to political liberation. So the main objective of today's conference is to put us on a spotlight the failure for government of Museveni to provide accountability for the killings of protesters which happened in November 17, 2020, and also the ongoing killings and other injustices in the country. And specifically, we purpose to achieve a number of objectives. One of them is to create an alliance between Ugandan human rights activists and the international community to demand accountability for human rights abuses by the Museveni regime. And second, to provide a forum for expressed solidarity with the victims of the ongoing human rights violations in Uganda, and also to document and also exhibit the cases of those human rights violations. And you have seen that as you come in, and there's also a documentary we are worked on, and also beyond this event, we are going to be undertaking further documentation with our colleagues from Uganda. And of course, we are also here to express solidarity. And at some point, you'll also hear speeches from our victims groups who have also gone through this kind of motions during the time of Moi, and also during the time of Uhuru Kenyatta and other governments in the country. So this event is also interesting because it also comes at a time when we have a new government, which seems to be very much associated with Museveni. And we are just hoping we are not going to go through that route, but together as human rights workers, we are very prepared to expose and also respond to any kind of impunity which is likely to come from that government. We have seen, barely 3 months after election, they have been making decisions which don't respect the Constitution of Kenya and the rule of law. People are saying we need to give them more time, but as we are very clear from Kenya Human Rights Commission, the signs are not good in terms of governance of public affairs. So with that context, I just want to get this chance to welcome you to this conversation and say this is not going to be the beginning. We are going to move together with our colleagues from Uganda and ensure that justice is served. At KHRC, we have a culture whereby once we get into a process around justice and accountability, we don't get out. We have been working with people who suffered during and yes. We have a culture of tenacity and resilience when it comes to pursuit of justice and accountability, both for historical and emerging injustice in the country. So we are very keen to work together with our friends from Uganda. And there are also other issues from Tanzania, like the killings and the evictions at Loriondo, which we have also picked, and we are also working with other partners in the country and also in the region. So I think because East Africa and Africa, we are also facing deficits of democracy. I think now it's time, as political and civil society actors, we find ways of working together so that we stand against this wave of impunity. So with those, it's my chance to just welcome you and hope we are going to have very insightful and candid discussions and also a very radical way forward. Asanteni sana.
Good morning. Good morning. My good name is Jerry. I'll be your Andrew's co-host this morning. I'd like to invite you all and thank you for coming. I have the pleasure of inviting our next speaker, Mr. Bernard Mogesa. Mr. Mogesa is the CEO of Kenya National Commission of Human Rights, and we're going to hear a few comments from him. Karibu. As he comes up, I'd like to remind you all the hashtags to use are bring back our people, hashtag bring back our people, and the other hashtag is M7NOV, N-O-V, Massacre UG. M7NOV, Massacre UG. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the welcome. When Malombe, the executive director of KHRC, invited me to this conference, Initially, I didn't know that I was going to speak, but later on, he told me that please prepare and make a very brief presentation on the role of KNCHR and other national human rights institutions in responding to emerging human rights issues and violations. He also did not disclose that Bobby Wine will be here because I'll be meeting him for the first time face to face and shake his hand and also give him a copy of this Constitution of Kenya as a gift from me. This will be yours, Bobby Wine, and I associate with your agenda of liberating Africa. National human rights institutions, of course, I don't want to dwell on their establishment, but all of us know that these are the public institutions that are supposed to stand in between the duty bearers and the right holders, who are the citizens. And they are given the mandates within the Constitution. For example, Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, under Article 59 of this Constitution, we are given the powers to promote and protect human rights. And also, our various constitutive acts, I'm very much aware of the various national human rights institutions in Africa, have also the constitutive acts, just like we do. However, I would like to zero in on the areas where we have gaps, especially in terms of programming in these institutions. And how are we responding then to emerging human rights issues or violations? To what extent, for example, my first question, is these institutions responding through programming matters climate change and human rights? You can look through across the East African region. How are we responding? Have we programmed for this? Because this is the point where a number of human rights violations, especially on economic, social, cultural rights, are violated. Number two, are we responding to the conservation of the environment and the nexus between this conservation and the protection of human rights in our countries? How are we dealing with the unlawful evictions, many times which happen at night? What is the response? What is the strategy that we have in place? These are the questions that NHRIs in the region and the continent needs to respond to. Defending the human rights defenders themselves. We see the persecutions that go through. What are the strategies within the national human rights institutions to protect the rights of those defenders who are also playing a very critical role in our various countries? Locally here we have quite a number of them. Kenyans know Boniface Mwangi, for example, is a household name, a gentleman who has really spent all his time trying to ensure that there is justice and, of course, access to justice among the other human rights defenders that we have. Protection of minorities and indigenous communities, as well as the sexual minorities. To what extent are we standing firm and speaking to the authorities to ensure that the protection of all these rights of the groups I've mentioned are taken care of? How are we implementing the recommendations, for example, from the treaty body mechanisms in our region? Because again, after those evaluations, our countries are given recommendations. How are we responding as NHRIs? How are we involving, the civil society organizations? How are we involving the political class to respond to those recommendations? Our countries lack political accountability, electoral violence. Those are issues that NHRIs must respond to. Extrajudicial executions and enforced disappearances is a thorn in the flesh. When I was walking into the room, I saw quite a display of persons who have lost their lives for a worthy cause. How are we coming in between to ensure this does not happen again? How are we dealing with the impunity and the lack of disrespect for the Constitution? How are we dealing with immigrant rights Right now, our girls and boys, particularly girls, are dying, in foreign countries. How is Kenya responding, for example? We don't buy the idea where you are told, no, Kenyans behave that way because that's how they behave at home. That is not an answer, especially when you lose a life of your citizens. So our governments must come out and protect the immigrant rights of our people who move to those countries. As I move to conclude, very critical challenge that national human rights institutions face is funding. And also I challenge those of you in the room to also look at how are these institutions funded. And I can tell you, without fear of contradiction, that we suffer budget cuts year in, year out. And I can confirm that the only budget that is never cut is that of salaries. But the rest, if I have to move here, I may need a border, or I may need a bicycle, or I may need to use various means. And this happens across all the NHRIs. So we call on adequate funding of these NHRIs so that they are able to meaningfully engage in the human rights agenda in the country. Finally, at the policy level, why should it, for example, take so long, like it did in Kenya, and the Kenyans, we took 2 years without commissioners. Why should that happen? And yet you have Kenyans who have gone to school, they have the papers, they can take those positions and drive the human rights agenda. I don't know whether it happens in Uganda, whether it takes long, or those who come into the office, whose voice are they speaking? Are they speaking the voice of the citizens, or they are speaking the voice of the appointing authority, so that tomorrow you also get another appointment? This is where we have challenges. And for us to overcome this, civil society organizations must keep NHRIs on their toes. Citizens must keep NHRIs on their toes, so that they also keep the government of the day on their toes. If God blesses you, Bobi Wine, to become president, always respect. Always respect the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. For the Kenyans in the room or citizens from other countries, it might look normal to have the head of a National Human Rights Commission speaking at an event like this one. But to Ugandans, at least speaking for myself, I am surprised and shocked that a person leading a national human rights institution can come to an event like this. We are shocked. Yeah, and I do not know whether you have any relationship with the Human Rights Commission in Uganda. Please do some capacity building for them. Very serious capacity building, because they issue statements that defend rights violators and ask citizens not to annoy police officers. So really, thank you, Dr. Mogesa, for addressing us here. We do not take it for granted. I'd like now to invite the Secretary General of the National Unity Platform, David Lewis Rubongoya. Please, with me, welcome him. And like everyone else, sir, you have 10 minutes.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. People power, our power, one Uganda, one people, country before self. That's for ANT. Mama Winnie is always teaching me the ANT symbol. Mr. President of NUP, President, founding leader, ANT, who is here today, the leader of the opposition in Parliament in Uganda, Deputy Presidents, of course, our very, very good hosts, KHRC, Mr. Malombe Davis, we really respect you and thank you so much for everything. Yeah, a round of applause for KHRC. They are the ones hosting us. Imam Kasozi, Dr. Sarah Bilete, and all of you distinguished guests. There are many of you. My role here is to just give context for this conference, and I'll do that in a very short time. So this conference is planned, of course, to take place here in Nairobi, Kenya today. And this conference is timed to coincide with the 2 days in November 2020 when over 100 young people were killed on the streets of Kampala. We all remember that. Those gruesome 2 days. That happened on the 18th and 19th of November 2020 when very many young people were killed. I was in Europe recently, and one of the people who was actually sent out from Uganda said that he saw over 200 bodies being taken into Mulago at that particular time. And eventually, of course, when he was trying to talk about this, he was declared persona non grata. So the security forces on those 2 days unleashed unprecedented violence on young Ugandans and, of course, old Ugandans, killing many of them whose pictures you've seen out there. Since then, Ugandan security forces under General Museveni have sustained extreme violence against, opponents, using kidnappings, elimination, torture, and other forms of human rights abuses against pro-democracy activists. Here in this room, we have many Ugandan citizens who are in Kenya, not because they came to visit, but because they are asylum seekers running away from the violence in Uganda. In spite of repeated assurances of accountability from the regime, we all know that there has been no accountability whatsoever. And I think the presence of the CEO of a human rights body here in Kenya, if you juxtapose that with the situation, the Uganda Human Rights Commission in Uganda, it is clear what we are dealing with in our country. So there has been no accountability at all. The overall objective of this conference is to establish a regional platform for mobilizing Ugandans and the international community to demand for accountability for gross human rights abuses by the regime in Uganda. The specific objective of this particular conference is to demand accountability for the protesters and other Ugandans who were killed in November 2020. And of course, demand accountability for the ongoing abductions of innocent people, especially young activists. As we all know, our comrade Kavuma Jamshid was taken away over 12 days ago, and up to now, nobody knows where he is. He was just found somewhere at a bar, shot in the leg from what the onlookers told us, and up to now, nobody knows where he is. To conclude, because I don't want to take a lot of your time, we want to use this conference to put a spotlight on the failure by the regime to provide accountability for the killings and other human rights violations. We also want to use this conference to create an alliance for expressing solidarity with the victims of the ongoing human rights violations and violence. Unfortunately, we have many people, victims who are still on the way, but they will be joining us later on. They were delayed in Uganda, but many of them are going to be coming in shortly. We also want to use this conference to document and exhibit cases of human rights violations and violence unleashed on Ugandans by the security forces and militia groups allied to General Museveni and his regime. As already mentioned, the choice of this venue, Ufungamano, is because this place is known for its role in liberation movements, and we hope that the political leaders who are gathered here, the victims of human rights violations, civil society leaders, development partners, religious and traditional leaders, local and international media, as well as the Ugandan asylum seekers, will end the day with creating a solidarity movement to condemn and fight human rights violations in our country. I thank you all for listening to me, for God and my country.
you very much. Let's give him another hand, please. All the things that he has said, the masks behind me and here are victims of these atrocities. They have names, some of them. These ones don't. This is others that have disappeared. And Ugandans, you will know this, and I believe everybody in this room knows this. There are people that are missing, people have been killed, and their whereabouts are not known. In front of me here, there's stories of some of those people. Some have survived immense torture. Outside there is also an exhibition of photos of the same, testimonials of people who've lived, others unfortunately who did not make it. So kindly make a point of going round and interacting with the exhibition, and let's make noise about what's going on. I want to also remind you that we are, our hashtag is M7 Nov Masaka UG, and bring back our people, hashtag bring back our people. Andrew?
Thank you, Njeri. Would like to involve you in the next session. And one of the ways we're going to do that is to have you share individually. We're going to pass this mic around. Njeri will help me do that, to pass this mic around, to share very briefly about, please listen to the question, where did the news of the shootings find you? Were you on the streets? Were you in office? Were you still in bed? Were you teaching? I see lecturers here. What were you doing when the news broke of these killings? We do not just want to have a rigid discussion. So we'd like to involve you as well. So put up your hand and share with us, and then we'll have our keynote speaker coming up shortly. So, by show of hands, would you like to share where you were, what you were doing when the shootings happened? Jerry, there's a hand here.
Lift your hand so I can see it.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Frank Kabuye. I'm the MP for Kasanda South constituency in Uganda, and also the Shadow Minister for the Youth and the Children in Uganda. The news of the shootings found me in my constituency because it was a day to go and peruse through the voters and inform them about change. We were preparing to go to a certain sub-county called Manyogaseka, because that's where our program was. Then in the village where I'm born from, we had news that one of our brothers and a neighbor had been shot. The guy was called Biguma Frank from Chakatebe LC1. So when we heard of Biguma, then we tried to check through our phones. We started receiving news that the president was arrested and people who were trying to demand for the rallies were shot dead. We had another news of Kaizi Christopher, still in my constituency in Myanzi sub-county. He was also shot dead as the police was trying to remove, because they had put a roadblock to request the police to come out and release the president unconditionally, so that we can also proceed in our campaign trail, because we had put it on a hold. That's how we got to know about it. And rest in peace to the souls we lost.
Njeri, there was a hand in front.
Well, the news found me in prison in Alufenya.
Good morning, comrades. My name is Katawaz Francis Katongole, and I'm the MP Kalungu East, and also Shadow Minister for East African Community Affairs. The news got me on my way. I was taking my wife to the hospital at the eve of the delivery of our baby, Freya Vicenta Nanyondo, who was born on the 18th, which is tomorrow. And thereafter, of course, we had President was arrested. After taking my wife to the hospital, we went to Nalufenya, where they almost arrested me, but I kind of survived. But my wife now saw me on the TV, said, You did not tell me where you went, but here we are, we have a new baby girl.
Thank you for sharing.
Habari gani wa member wa struggle pamoja na viongozi? I'm called General Vigirwa Moses. I'm Secretary for Mobilization, NUP, Eastern Uganda. The news, the shooting, actually for me, I was involved in the news. The news did not found me. I was the host of the president. We were in Luuka, in the region where I come from. That is Usoga sub-region. So the president was brutally arrested. The press wanted to know what is going on, what next. So I stood before the cameras and addressed them that let everybody do what we can, what he can, because now it is now the real struggle. So the news started. Everyone started doing what he can, and we started accompanying the president because they were driving him in the unknown destination. We accompanied him up to Nalufenya. By reaching Nalufenya, we were passing through dead bodies. Everything was now out of our control. So the news did not find me, but I was involved in the news, and I narrowly survived.
Thank you, Vigirwa. Let's have more contributions. For those who do not know, Nalufenya is a notorious prison in Uganda, notorious for torture, unlawful detentions, and killings.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm Nyeko Derek, Member of Parliament for Makindye East and Shadow Minister for Presidency and Security. Well, this news found me in the field when I got to learn that our president was arrested. Immediately, where I was, the army surrounded the whole village that was in Kabalagala. It arrested me straight away to Kabalagala police station, where I was detained for 3 days. In only that period of 2 months, I was detained 17 times with no crime, with no track of theft, with no track of any crime ever. It was my first time to be in prison for several times for no good reason, but rather than the struggle of the people.
Thank you. A few more hands, please.
Asanteni sana, mimi nitatumia Kiswahili. Naongea kuhusu watoto yangu wenye walikuwa na president. Hao watoto wanaitwa Sami and Lobby wa Might Family. Hiyo wakati walinyanyaswa sana sana tena sana. Kwanza huyo Sami aling'olewa nywele zote, alikuwa na dread hiyo wakati.
I want to translate for our Ugandan comrades. Yes? Okay, let's do this again.
I do. So, watoto wakashikwa hivyo, wakanyanyashwa vibaya sana sana sana. Huyo aling'olewa nywele, huyo Lobby akafungwa pamoja na Nubian Lee, Edimutwe, Mapo Media, nadhani mlikuwa mnajua hao.
She had 2 of her children arrested, and they were abused. One of them had dreadlocks, they were plucked, and the other one was also beaten very much.
Yes, yeah, that's mine. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Sarah Biret is my name. I'm the Executive Director, Center for Constitutional Governance. During elections, we were doing pictorial coverage of all presidential candidates everywhere. So we had set up a press unit in the office, and we are all covering every media, including social and digital media platforms. So we covered the news of the arrest. We were following through the live channels that People Power movement was doing, as well as other media. And we got the news in our press unit, and we still have the pictorial coverage of day-to-day violent presidential elections in Uganda. That day, all the staff slept at office in the chairs because we could not get out.
Thank you. More hands from this side, and then we'll bring it to a close. Yes.
People power, our power. My name is Lena Zedriga. I am the Deputy President, National Unity Platform Party, in charge of Northern Uganda. The news found me in Gulu. I had actually just arrived because His Excellency and the team had been in Northern Uganda the previous week, where I myself had also been arrested with the entire team from Northern Uganda, brutally abducted, beaten up, and imprisoned with men. And after I was released, he was very safely delivered, I thought, to Eastern region. So I left to go to Northern Uganda. As I arrived in Gulu, that was when I had the news. I just made a U-turn to come to camp in solidarity. And also I remember that day, 2 of my sons were brutally beaten and arrested. True. Nathan and Francis.
Thank you, sir. My name, I'm called Chambade Slight from Chotela. That news found me in prison where I lost my eye until today. Thank you.
Asante sana. My name is Agoda Moses. I'm the People's MP Hoima East Constituency and the Youth Secretary, Western Uganda, NUP. That news found me in the police van. I was arrested that day, actually prior to that day, on allegations that I'm mobilizing the whole of Hoima City to demonstrate, and well indeed we were going to demonstrate. But shockingly, a few hours later, the police officers were telling me that how we wish we had not arrested you. Indeed, it was going to be massive. We are also tired. So that one gave me more courage to fight harder. Thank you so much.
I'm Fausta Vitano from Makindye. The news found me in the market. After 2 days, of 17th, after arresting the president, I remember we had a boy along Chibuye Road, Entebbe Road, who used to hold a big post of Mr. President. That boy, he was a neighbor to us. He was murdered, slaughtered. The head was put in the sack by the regime of Mr. Museveni. After 2 days of arresting my president, Bobi Wine. Thank you.
Thank you. By names of Sempija Brian. The news found me in the hospital. I was in the hospital because I was beaten a tear gas canister, evidenced by my fingers. So by then, by the time we went, as I was in the hospital, I called my friends that our president arrested. What is there on the village? They started mobilizing themselves, and they started going to the police. Thank you.
Juliet Nakaisa. Okay, for me, the news found me in town. I was in Kampala, around Mini Price. So when the people in Kampala had the arrest of our president in Luka, because for us we are planning to go and join him that side, after the people had that news that the president has been arrested, people started rioting. Then in that process, a lady who was carrying some food from down was shot, and even another mother who was serving her kid, they were going to shop some things. The boy was shot. The police, the police came and surrounded many people who were in town. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. We will have more opportunity for colleagues to share. But there's a burning hand here. She will not forgive me if I don't give her an opportunity. Please run to the front and share, and we'll end with you for now.
It was not news to me. It happened before my very eyes because I was with the president in Luka. So they arrested him in my presence. There was a lot of tear gas, bullets. They fired bullets. Elderly people were stumbled upon. We even chased I chased the president's vehicle up to Narufenya, where we were stopped. And I had to head to Kampala because the road was blocked. So when I headed to Kampala, there was chaos. By the time we arrived in Kampala, bullets were flying all over. There were roadblocks all over, everywhere. And around Namugongo, because we passed via Kayunga, around Namugongo, we were taken out of our car and beaten because we were putting on red. So they said, you are causing this chaos. Get out of your car and remove all the stones and the trees, the leaves that were put people had put as roadblocks in the road. So we had to get out of our car, clear the road, and we were made to lay down for about an hour. Then we were asked to head on because people were shouting all over. The people were on the buildings shouting, people power, our power. And then the policemen just told us, you leave because you are causing more chaos. So that's how we survived.
Thank you. My name is Nicholas Magezi. The news of arresting His Excellency Robert Kyagulanyi and other comrades found me in Segugu, where we had a meeting and security forces, they found
Please, you have a strong voice. Please, we need to hear that. You said you were beaten very well. I'd like you to explain how. And maybe Bobby Wine should also tell us whether he agrees with the resident dictator that he was beaten very well, or properly, as the dictator said.
Thank you. Once again, I'm Nicholas Magezi. The news of arresting His Excellency Mr. Kyagulanyi and other comrades found us in Segugu, where we had a meeting on the following day. Security forces, they found us there, and they gave us, I think, what they wanted to give us. They beat us, they tortured us, up to the extent some of our comrades died. As I speak, as you see me here, I lost my life, but I'm still alive, because I lost some parts of my body.
Thank you for sharing.
I'm out of my words, because if I remember the day security forces beat us in Segugu, because even I lost some of my friends. Some of my friends, others are still in Chigo, in Kampala prisons. I don't know even how I can start sharing this, because this story is a sad story, because I lost some of comrades, others are still in the prison, others are still in the hospital. But once again, I want to thank His Excellency and NUP team that had been giving us treatment, that has been giving us everything we need. Thank you, His Excellency, and NUP leaders.
Thank you. There's a hand here, Jerry.
I would request someone to translate it for me. Let me use my mother tongue so that our people can listen and get my point. Nze Charles Mpanga.
My name is Charles Mpanga,
aka Map Media TV.
Also known as Map Media TV.
Nkolanga munnamawulire wa NUP.
I work as a journalist for the National Unity Platform.
Olunaku olwo nali nkavalinga president nga tugenda eruuka.
On that day, nali nsaka, since you said you are covering, so I'm also translating to Luganda. But go ahead.
Twali tuyingira Luuka.
We were entering Luka district.
Agali gambadde black ne mundu zesirabangako ne batusalako.
We were apprehended by military officers in black.
Baatugamba abamawulire tetugenda kukkirizibwa.
We were told we were not going to be allowed as journalists.
Baayaza amamotoka gaffe naye ne tusalawo abamu twali twakola lobadaba style akagambo president waffe Kyagulanyi ke yatuyigiriza.
Our cars were searched, but we were able to get away with our equipment.
Twagezaako okubalaga emmotoka ng'ate bwe tusonga engalo abamu batuyitemu bagende bakavalinge president.
We were able to maneuver and get away with some vehicles and equipment.
Abaasigala emabega baali bagezaako okulaba nti batuziyiza okukwata ebifaananyi obutagenda mu bantu naye bannaffe abamu ne bafuna chance ne bagenda ewali president ne bakwata.
A number of officers stayed behind to ensure that we do not broadcast.
Twawaganya naffe ku mmotoka ze baali bagezaako okusalako naffe ne tuzivuga ne tuyingira. President twamusanga batandise omukwata. Twamugoba emisinde ne batwekiika mu kkubo. Emiggo gyavuga nze simanyi emiggo gyankubwa ku olwo.
Okay, I have to translate that.
Omusango okusinga.
Just hold on, wait. That's an important detail. We were able to pursue the vehicle in which the president who had been arrested was being driven, and there was a hail of beatings and cans. He personally does not know how many got onto his body.
Nenga ekyali kisinga otukubya singa ogezaako n'olaga ku kadi y'amawulire egyo gyali emiggo tetwamanya nti mu Uganda guba musango okubeera munnamawulire.
Being a journalist was criminalized, especially holding a card that identified you as one was an offense.
Nali nziruka nze nvuga ate nze nkutte kamera kubanga driver wange baali bamaze omukuba.
I was driving while filming.
Twatuuka mu kkubo nga Eddie Mutwe, Mark driver wa president, Akirewo Kivumbi, Dan Magiki ne Franka ne Ashraf Kasirye bagudde ku ttaka. Tetwalina kyakkola okujjako ate okuddako emabega okubakasuka mu mmotoka eyali okumpi. Era ka video ako nenkakwata speed nenkasaayo nenvuga ate ngende Nalufenya gye batute president.
Okay, all those names are of people who had been hit. I think Ashraf Kasiri was shot in the head. Eddie Mutwe here had also been temporarily put out of action, and several others had been severely injured. So he had to carry them with others into the vehicle.
Tuba tutuuka e Nalufenya ffe twalowooza nti tuli bannamawulire naye akaguwa ke baatuterawo gaalinga masasi ge baakubanga layini not to cross.
He and his journalist colleagues thought that because they were journalists, they would be allowed to get into Nalufenya police station, prison, but they were instead kept out by the use of bullets that were fired in a line to show that they shouldn't cross that line.
Amangu ago na coordinatinga omwana akola ku camera 2 eya Mapu Media TV ne mugamba switchinge on camera eri mu kibuga wakati Kampala.
I asked a colleague to turn on camera 2, which covers Kampala.
Nkiwa nti kamera eyo yagolokosa abantu bangi okumanya nti president waffe ddala kituufu bamaze omukwata.
That camera did a crucial job in informing the population about what was happening.
Ndowooza ngenda okutunula ku kamera ekyanzizaamu amaanyi nti twali tutuuse mu 24K viewership abaali ku live essaawa ezo.
We had a huge audience at that point of 24,000 Nsabasebo or Funze.
Yes. Nga maliriza nti abasigala e Nalufenya twali tusabira bali mu Central nga n'abali mu Central basabira ffe abali e Nalufenya. Bwe zaawera ssaawa 12 ez'akawungeezi ne batutega akamotoka nti president bamutadde omwo ne tugoba akamotoka mpaka Gayaza. Unfortunately ne tusanga ng'ate si bwe bamutadde ate ne tuvuga ate ne tudde e Nalufenya.
A ploy was hatched and they followed the ploy where a decoy car was used to make them believe that Bobi Wine had been put in a certain vehicle, whereas not, and they pursued that vehicle only to realize later that they were following a dead lead.
Mu ebyo nga byakaggwa nga tukyanyiga ebiwundu nze omu ku bannamawulire gwe bakwatira e Kalangala emikono gine gyekutte microphone n'amagulu gano nze omu gwe basooka okusalako ne bansibira e Kalangala okumala emyezi 8.
He is one of the journalists that were arrested in Kalangala Islands and was imprisoned. His limbs were bound for 8 months in custody.
Ogwantusibya ne bannange kubeera nti mpagira oba nkwata ebifaananyi ebya National Unity Platform ate nga ngoberera His Excellency Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu. Thank you.
His only offense being a supporter of and a journalist for the National Unity Platform. Thank you very much for sharing. So that brings this brief segment to an end. Jerry would like to, okay, we have, if you have a copy of the program, which I'm sure many of you have, there is a screening of a short video about human rights violations in Museveni's Uganda. That will be conducted outside this auditorium. But for now, we'd like to proceed to have the keynote address. But I'd like to encourage all of us to, when the time allows, to step out and view that short video. It's illustrative, it's informative, and for anyone who wants to appreciate what has happened, to see some of these things in motion, these incidents here that are lined up here and outside, you could go take a look at that recording. Now I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Andrew David Omona, who will deliver the keynote address this morning. He is the Dean of the School of Social Sciences at Uganda Christian University and National Coordinator, Religious Leaders, Justice and Peace Network, Uganda. Please welcome Dr. Andrew David Omona. So, Dr. Omona, I should disclose to the audience that you were my lecturer at the School of Law, UCU. You used to cut short our presentations and tell us we have 5 minutes. Today I'm going to revenge. You have 20 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Andrew, for ushering me in. As he said, my name is Omona Andrew David. I do many work, and one of which is to teach. I would like to thank the Kenyan Human Rights Commission for extending this invitation to me, and our political leaders in Uganda for coming to be part of this discussion. And you, ladies and gentlemen, you peace-loving Ugandans, ardent supporters of human rights accountability in our country. I'm going to give a brief highlight on a topic that I have given as human rights landscape in Uganda, a narrative of contradictions. When you talk about human rights, these are rights that are given to all of us, and no one gives us because we have been given this by birth. But if you look at the situation in Uganda, right from when we started as a country, the narrative of human rights is full of contradictions. Like a hydra in Greek mythology. In Greek mythology, a hydra is a snake-like monster with 9 heads. Of these 9 heads, 8 are mortal, and 1 head is immortal. And whenever the mortal heads are cut, other mortal heads emerge from the wounds of the cut head. So if there are 9, 1 is cut, then 2 will emerge or more, and the head keeps growing. This monster, according to the Greek mythology, lived in a marsh near Lena, in the place of Lena near Argos, from which this monster usually emerges to torment animals and human beings of Lena. People tried to kill this monster, but every time they tried, they failed. And one man, Heracles, took it upon himself as one of the 12 things that he had said to do. But he tried every time he cut the head, other heads emerged. So not until he had to employ the service of his nephew, Hiodas, and Hiodas kept assisting him whenever the head was cut. He would seal it so that other heads will not emerge from this cut wound. And not until Hercules was able to cut the immortal head and got the head buried under a rock, and then inflicted the final pain on the hydra that made it die completely. As you'll recall, at independence, many writers say Uganda began on a right platform. The first 2 years, vestiges of colonial administration was rooted out, and the nationals took over the country. And people got excited that we are in charge of our own affairs. The government took to construct schools, hospitals, roads, and other social amenities. But this was only short-lived. When cracks started developing between them, it eventually got ugly, and the innocent people felt the brunt. The monster started emerging, and many people, during the first period of our independence in the 1960s, those of you who were alive, I was not born yet, attest to these facts. And as things continued, even the people who sat together could no longer sit together. The military got involved in this saga, and the military for the first time became the arbiter of political controversies in the country and entrenched themselves into the political life of the country. And of course, you get a military man who is there to obey orders. Once an order is given, the order is done to the best of the giver of orders. And these and others led to cutting of the head of the hydra that was disturbing the people of Uganda. In 1971, people saw Obote as the problem of Uganda, as the monster that was disturbing Uganda. And the military, with Amin taking over, giving good 18 points for taking over government, and accusing the past government of detention without trials, and other human rights related issues. And when you read the 18 points that the military gave to take over the government, you may think this is now a group of people who will make things better. But the better was not realized by the people. Not long after that, the real character of the military, in the person of their chief executive, started showing up. The cut head of the Hydra led to the growing of more heads, and with a lot of Pharaoh. People disappeared, people were tortured. I remember that time I was a young boy, born in 1970. My father was working somewhere, and there were people who were guarding an airfield that was near our home. And there were some soldiers who used to come home and chat with us. Whenever they got rations, they could bring for us children, and we were happy. But from nowhere, we could not see these people coming. And our parents told us that those people were taken and killed. These are people from Acholi and Olango. And brute was the force that it started killing its own, even in uniform. And everyone took position to do whatever he could do in the name of keeping the state. And yet the other day, of the 18 points, human rights abuses were echoed as things that are coming to close. Then fast forward, peace-loving, human rights ardent Ugandans mobilized with the Tanzanian forces, and Uganda was liberated. And people sang, people were liberated. And the name of the forces were the liberators, liberating us from what? From tyranny. But what ensued thereafter even became worse. Those who saw bodies littered around the country, littered around the roads, and so forth. And then I was just in primary 1, but my schooling was punctuated with a lot of confusion. At times you take a long time not going to school, and so forth. And the years that followed, some of us slept more in the bush than in our houses, because whatever was happening was bad. For my case, I was in Germany, and then there was a rebel group led by Moses Ali. Whenever those groups come, the UNLA will come after that and torture the people that you are part of the rebels. Whenever the rebels come, they accuse you of supporting the government, and so you don't know where to belong. Rights abusers. And they did this at will. And people's hands were all tied behind them. No one could do anything. Then the 80s, the late 70s, and then mid-80s. People thought things were getting better. Amin was gone. The head of the Hydra was cut. Less did the people know that more heads were going to grow on the Hydra. And the same situation started replaying, if not even worse. The forces that liberated the country became even more terrible. Revenge killings, torture of the innocent, and so forth defined the country. I remember my brother visited Arua, and they were made to lie, to be shot. Then he raised up his hand, he spoke, and they told him to get up. But before he could rescue the people who he had visited, the order was given, and all those who were lying down became corpses. And that was the country that we lived in. The liberators from human rights abuses became abusers, even terrible, of human rights. Each group that came with different agenda. One promising restoration of peace, prosperity, and so forth, but in actual sense, it is just a cover-up of yet what is to follow. When Obote became the president, things of course continued in the 80s. And Tito Okello eventually overthrew the government, claiming the same mistakes, but the situation continued. Our current president, feeling cheated during the elections, went to the bush and started talking things that people thought would be good. And people like Dr. Besige, Mugisha Muntu, eventually joined, knowing that things will be better because the picture was painted bright. Liberating Uganda from the hands of tyranny. And the 10-point program was put forward, started politicizing, and this is our agenda, and eventually took over power in 86. I had just completed P7 in 85. And we were not sure of whether we'll go to school. And when the government fell off, we were excited because it opened us the way to go to Senior 1. And we went to Senior 1. We overheard that a pro-civilian armed forces have come to the scene of Uganda. And to prove this, the errant soldiers were firing squad. The soldiers who committed some crimes were shot dead in public. And people said, yes, this is now a civilian-faced government. And then immediately, a commission of inquiry into human rights abuses was launched. Justice Oder and his team were given a task to do. I have flipped through the pages of that report, though not many Ugandans have seen. Just like the commission of inquiry that Amin instituted to look at the disappearance of Ugandans, then this commission was just targeted. From 9th October 1962 to 25th January 1986. And when you read the report, you found that some of the reports were just meant to confirm what somebody wants to start with. And unfortunately, because of some aspects of the report was not made public. If you want to get the report, you have to go through external sources to get the report. The army started at it again, abusing people's rights. I went collecting data for my PhD, and some of the stories that I gathered could not be taken by people who are faint-hearted. See somebody first cry before they tell you their story. Stories of abuses across the country. Economic deprivation, raping of women and girls, sodomy of men in front of the members of their families, started manifesting. Fast forward, 1995. A new constitution was promulgated with a beautiful preamble. Let me read word for word. We, the people of Uganda, recalling our history, which has been characterized by political and constitutional instability, recognizing our struggle against the forces of tyranny, oppression, and exploitation, committed to building a better future by establishing a socio-economic and political order through a popular and durable national constitution based on the participation on the principle of unity, peace, equality, democracy, freedom, social justice, and progress, exercising our sovereignty and inalienable rights to determine the form of governance for our country, and having fully participated in the constitution-making process, noting that a constituent assembly was established to represent us and to debate the draft constitution prepared by the Uganda Constitution Commission, and to adopt and enact a constitution for Uganda, do hereby, in and through this Constitution Assembly, solemnly adopt, enact, and give to ourselves, our posterity, this Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, this 22nd day of September in the year 1995. A very good preamble. When you read this, you get to know that we, through this, set to correct the wrongs that bedeviled our country over the years. But did we get it? Beautiful preamble indeed. And a whole chapter of the Constitution, chapter 4, is dedicated to human rights and freedoms. But we are witnessing the contrary. With time, of course, series of acts came up. To undo what has been done in the name of terrorism, the Terrorist Act, the Computer Misuse Act, Uganda Communications Act, and so forth, were put up to marshal the people. I and Kasozi and our colleagues, we took it upon ourselves to go around the country and work for justice and peace. But we were misunderstood. One time I was asked, who do you work for? I say, I work for all. I work for peace and justice. Where there is justice, then we will have achieved what we are working for. But you see that rights abuse has been the order of the day. Informal groups like the Kiboko squads, the chieftaincy of military intelligence, having safe houses. People talked about the dungeon of Nakasero. We have many safe houses in the country. You get a general standing up saying we shall shoot and kill, and nothing happens. Court-martial, targeted, even civilians tried. Militarized police, only beating those with different views. The past elections. When other people go to campaign, they violate the SOPs. But when the head of state goes, SOPs put aside. And the situation that we saw happen this day in 2020 was just but a series of happenings that our people have gone through. People have been disabled. People cannot speak. That which is supposed to be good for the country is not seen to be the good. Good is defined, or rights of people is defined by who says it is a right. We have resources of the country, but you hear some people saying, my oil, my this. Karamoja, a resource-rich area. But can you imagine the people of Karamoja starving? My sister was working there as a medical officer, and she said at one time, women could go to the streams and pick gold, and then they exchange the gold for posho. But they have been denied now to get to this gold. You have had LC officials killed by the military just because, in Karamoja, just because they were trying to open the eyes of the masses. A friend of mine went to Karamoja and told those people, you are fighting for the cows, but even what you're working on is more than the cows, you don't know. But there are some people who know. Uganda launched a satellite recently, and it is meant to scan the country, locate the mineral areas, and such location will be renegated in the hands of a few who are more Ugandans than other Ugandans. According to the US State Department report on Uganda of 2020, human rights abuses in Uganda is part of the daily occurrence. And recently, the Makerere University, Huripek, also released their report. And the same is said again and again. The other time, some of us were enlisted to be foot soldiers of the purported peace commission that people were drumming to come up with. The elders of Uganda, the religious leaders of Uganda, and all other people who were concerned drummed up, and we thought something was going to come. We'll sit down and talk. But the hopes disappeared in thin air. As we talk to ourselves, as we reflect on what is going on in our country, let us be mindful of also doing the right so that people will see us in the right and following that which we need to happen. The other time, Dr. Kiza Besigye was arrested in his own house. I and Kasozi and others went to visit him so that we talked to him. We were told to go away. That was, I think, 2016. When we were turned away, we went to see Honorable Amama Mbabazi. We found there were no security forces there. We went and had time with him. We attempted to make appointments to see the president, to see Kale Keihura and others. We were not allowed because people saw us to be trouble causers. And yet our intention was to see that everybody who is in Uganda live in peace, we see justice, and good interpersonal relationship in our country. As we talk, let us act, because today it is others who have disappeared, tomorrow you'll be the one disappearing. Yesterday, other people were taken to prison, and as I hear of the testimonies, beaten. Tomorrow it may be you to be beaten. But before you are beaten or arrested, try to talk it out so that people who care about the country will join hands and ensure that we see something good happening in our country. For God and my country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. David Omona Andrew. You guys have not done justice to appreciate him. Thank you. He does a fantastic job of periodizing Uganda's post-independence experience along the 9 or so regimes that we've had. And he uses an analogy of a hydra. A hydra is a mythical animal in Greek folklore that cannot easily die. Every time you cut off one head, 5 or more heads come out of that animal called a hydra. And this is the canvas that he uses to paint the keynote address that he has very eloquently delivered. Dr. Omona decries the repetitive trends of misrule, militarism, and rights abuses that run through the country's post-independence lifetime. He also indicts the Museveni regime, which has ruled for longer than previous presidents combined, and beginning with encouraging, while these regimes, just like Amin's, began with hopeful statements, actions like restraining their soldiers, use of the firing squad to rein in errant officers, the same regimes have become what they purportedly fought against. He's talked about atrocities such as rape as a weapon of war in particularly northern Uganda, economic deprivation, and that even with a constitution that was promulgated in 1995 and the hope that it represented, we've still reverted to the same state of affairs that we were in pre-1995. He talks about the trends of legislation like the Computer Misuse Act, Anti-Terrorism Law, Anti-Money Laundering Act, and several